Oh, don't mind that. That's not sketchy at all.
Alright everybody, welcome back to the electric surfboard build. Just want to do a quick recap of what we've done so far. I designed this board in Fusion 360. I printed off using my CR10 3D printer, just using regular PLA plastic, and then glued it all together and gotten to the point we are now. This is the fourth video in the series. I'm hoping to have just about everything done on the board, aside from electronics, at the end of this video. And then of course, I'm hoping for in the next video to actually have it on the water. It's winter time right now in Ohio, so it'll be a little bit until that next video does come out, but I didn't want this project to run stale, so here is just the next installment of all the nitty-gritties that have gone into creating the electric surfboard. So let's get right into it. Alright, so first off, let's mix up some epoxy. This is flexible epoxy from Total Boat. I use this quite a bit because it adheres super well to plastics and wood, which is the two main components, as you'll see. But what I'm doing is cementing down these white columns that will hold the rider and hold the cover for the electronics and battery compartment. Along with that, I use some expanding foam just to kind of sturdy up the sides of the container here, and also I put some behind those columns just to give them a little more little solid setup, because I like to use that cover also for handles so that you can carry the surfboard with, which you'll actually see later in the video. But this worked really well. The expanding foam is actually pretty messy stuff, but once it hardens you can cut it really easy with a razor blade, so it actually worked out pretty well. So the next step now is to add the entire top to the surfboard, which will start right now. Okay, so a little bit about the plan of action here for epoxying the top of the surfboard right here onto the surfboard. We're using a little bit different type of epoxy with this process. The epoxy I was using was a flexible epoxy that was rated for wood and plastics, or most plastics. It was a Total Boat brand, but they are out of stock with that stuff. So we are resorting to this high performance epoxy. Now this is not rated for plastic, it's rated for wood, concrete, other types of materials, but not PLA plastic. If I leave it just a printed part where it's smooth and doesn't have any ridges to it, this does not stick very well and it peels off quite easily. But if I sand it down with 80 grit sandpaper and make lots of grooves and make it really basically rough, it adheres to it really well and just has a lot more to grab onto. Basically what we're going to do here is simply make a epoxy solution, of course. We're going to layer that onto the plastic just as is, and the board to give it a sort of a top coat, you could say. And while we're doing that, before of course it sets or dries or anything, we're going to make a thickened patch of epoxy using this fumed silica. So we're going to mix this with that epoxy to thicken it up. And with that thickened epoxy, I can put it on top of all these wooden ridges. It's not going to perfectly contact the top of that board, so having them having like a bead essentially of epoxy on each one that can kind of sit like toothpaste almost. Then when I put the top on, everything will connect a little bit. I'll also put it along the edge just to give it kind of fill any gaps. And then of course I'll weight it down and we'll let it set. So actually, I went back and forth whether or not I should put a layer of fiberglass down for the wooden pieces here, especially the top piece. And actually what I found out is if I did a little, I guess you could say, test run, where I just laid it on top of the surfboard and then I stood on it, and it really didn't crack or bow too much at all. So in light of just saving some weight, I opted to not do that. Essentially, if you use epoxy with fiberglass topping, you have to saturate it enough that it totally saturates the fiberglass. Well, that adds so much weight, and I probably have to use double if not triple the amount of epoxy just to keep it all coated. So just wood and epoxy here, and I think that's going to actually work out pretty darn well. Also, make sure you're wearing a respirator or some kind of mask if you use that fumed silica. It is really dusty. About what I'm looking for, almost like this nasty toothpaste that looks like this. That just looks so gross. This is partly why I pre-soaked the plastic, so that, you know, this will actually, you know, kind of bond to what's already soaking into the plastic and into the wood. And now we got like a nice thick paste. So just keep things spread equally. What I did there is use like a 60 mil giant syringe, cut a hole that's a little larger than what it came with, and then I was able to lay that bead of epoxy really nicely on top of all the wooden ridges. And like I said, it was a little uneven with the top board on it, so this really helps close the gap. Also, it makes it all extremely strong. I know a lot of people had commented to put those inlying slats lengthwise, which thinking back, I probably should have, as they are right now kind of perpendicular to the board. It doesn't offer as much support, but between the 3D printed outline and the two boards sandwiching it, it's actually quite strong, quite rigid. Obviously, this project isn't meant to last, 50 years or something. It's going to be just for fun, so I can always improve later. So just putting this top on here, and like I said, the coat of epoxy is still wet. That's attaching to those ridges with the beads of epoxy, and then I'm just weighting it all down so that it stays nice and flush. I probably put a solid 150 pounds worth of tools and stuff on it just to keep it really nicely smushed. Well, that looks really good. The next step is to cut out the battery box area and the motor mount wiring box area. So let's do that next. Alright, so for this part I just used a router with, as you can see the bit there, it's just got that ball bearing at the bottom. And what I can do then is just cut a couple holes into those two compartments and just follow the edge of the supports underneath to cut out those holes nice and flush, nice and clean. I'm later going to seal these off as best I can by using some weather stripping, as you'll see. But I just really liked the way this worked out. Didn't have to measure anything, didn't have to kind of pre-plan. I just epoxied that top board in place and then cut them out with that bit. It worked out really nice, I think. Like I said, I'm going to use that weather strip. I'm going to try to make these two compartments as waterproof as possible, but I'm not really too worried about it. If water gets into them, they're not going to get to other parts of the board. It's really well sealed off, and then later I did use some extra epoxy just to fill in any possible gaps. So yeah, I think it worked out really well. I will say this is one time where I wish my shop was outside. The amount of crud that came off of that bit with all the epoxy and wood made a huge mess. That's okay. So the piece of wood I'm putting in place here, I cut it to be nice and flush. I later had to trim off more on the edges and kind of put a little bit of a, what do they call that, chamfer along the edge so that I could deal with the weather stripping. But it was a nice tight fit to begin with, just not going to be waterproof, so I had to improve upon that. Alright, I have some weather stripping to put around the inside rim so that when I put this piece on, it seals it up nicely. Also, I need to attach these to the underside of the wood so that when I force put it down, I can screw through the top and it'll make nice and flush and a good seal. So let's do that next. So I will admit this was one part that isn't super robust. The little bit of adhesive that those strips come with doesn't really do a good job in adhering to the edges. I ended up having to kind of reinforce that with just some glue, which I think it'll work fine, at least to start with. I will say along this build there were many times where I later thought of a better idea, but also you gotta think of what's gonna be best for your budget and then what will be enough for what you're building. This isn't gonna sit outside next to the dock all year. It's gonna be kind of treated real nicely. So yeah, let's continue on. Well, probably put a very big bevel around the whole thing anyways, but okay, so here I'm just epoxying on those plastic puck washer looking things. And the whole idea here is that I wanted something flush across. This definitely gave me that option or gave me that ability. I looked up a bunch of hinges for like marine grade or something that was just really flush, and they're super expensive. They're like 20 bucks each, and then I had to deal with a whole bunch of hardware. So this was a really cheap, efficient system. I'll have to just twist on those nuts or those screws with my fingertips, and then they're good. All right, so these are all epoxied in. good to go. Let's go ahead and put this on the board. Fits nice and good. And all we gotta do is just screw these in by hand. It's a little snug, just finger tight in here. Ain't going anywhere. So once those are in, it's nice and flush. I did put handles on, as you can see. Just real cheap off Amazon, just a bolt through with a washer on the back. No big deal. This makes it real easy to carry around. I bet you this thing weighs about 25 pounds or so. You can probably double that once you add the once I add the electronics and the batteries. There'll be some pretty big batteries that you saw in the other videos, but anyhow, that really finishes up that. I do need to add another, of course, top for the other electronics area. I'm not sure what I'm going to use this back compartment for. I'm not sure if I'm going to use it for just wiring that goes into the motor and everything else, or actually put the electronic speed controller here. We'll see, but I do have to kind of create a cover for that. I might use plexiglass, or else maybe I'll use just wood like I did. If I do the electronic speed controller back here, I kind of was thinking plexiglass so I can visually see it, and then also I can put like a voltage reader so that when you're riding you can look back and say, okay, how many volts do I have left in my battery? Gives you an idea of what battery level's at. But for the most part, this is really it for the board. As you can see, I already epoxied the top. You can't quite tell, but I epoxied the plastic on the side too. I decided to not use any fiberglass. I think it's gonna be strong enough. I can put weight on this wherever I want, and it doesn't even bow at all. I don't plan on running into stuff with this thing, so I'm hoping the plastic on the edges plus the epoxy layer will be enough to keep it safe. I also reinforced my hook up here for the motor, which is some more epoxy. I'm hoping that isn't strong enough, and then I just reinforce all the edges and then smooth them out. So it is really done except for the electronics. Now, the electronics is a pretty big part of this whole operation. I think a lot of people get to a really nice board build, and then the electronics come into play, and everything kind of goes south because, same with me, I'm looking for the most inexpensive setup for this. I did cover my electronics in a previous video, but putting them in and actually trying it is going to be an experience, I think. So that's going to have to wait for the next video. What I'd like to do is finish the electronics in the next video and actually take it out for a test drive. And right now it's winter in Ohio, so it's going to be a while, a few months. So I'll take that slow. You'll probably see videos. You probably won't see a video for a few months, but yeah, just nature of it. Anyhow, I hope you've enjoyed this so far. I think it's really come together nicely at the end here, and I'm excited to keep moving with it and actually try it out on the water. I do want to put up some videos in between, so I've been having a lot of fun with 3D printing and looking into getting a CNC machine for metal and plastic parts. So just something to kind of keep an eye out for. And also been doing little builds with just small things I need around the house. So some stuff I might want to share, but this project is kind of going on the back burner a little bit just because it's winter and I can hurry up and get it done in a month, but then I won't be able to try it out for another 2 months. So I'm going to take it easy. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. I think it's given people hopefully some good ideas on how they can do this on their own. And yeah, we'll keep moving forward as time goes on. But again, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and hope it's given you some ideas for your own projects. Have a good day.